What's going on, Golf Addicts? DB here, and I'm going to give you three chalk plays in DFS for the RBC Heritage 2022, and three pivots, three guys that are right there near these chalky plays, and some reasons I think you could pivot and get a little ownership leverage. We all know that ownership leverage, having some low owned guys that pop, is the name of the game when it comes to playing DraftKings and DFS and winning GPP tournaments. That's what you got to do. I'm not going to get into the reasons why these guys are chalk when I name those guys, but I'm just going to tell you who they are. And I'm not saying don't play them. They're obviously chalk for a reason. They check a lot of boxes. But then I'm going to take you to the pivot plays and kind of show you the model. I'm going to share my screen here in just a minute on Fantasy National, show you the model, show you what's up. So here we go. This is the model here on Fantasy National. As you can see, I've got it pretty weighed heavily right here with iron play. We talked about it on the podcast. By now, you probably researched a lot about Harbor Town. I'm giving Harbor Town even more emphasis on iron play. Small greens, not really all that penal rough. As long as your guys are on the on the proper side of the fairway approaching these greens, their angles are going to be good. I'm ready to see the really good iron players make it happen. This is ball striking, but this is a minimum last 24 rounds at Harbor Town. So I'm just looking at ball striking at Harbor Town. Tell them it's a way to look at course history, but it's a way to look at guys who historically have hit it really well here tee to green. It just removes the around the green play and the putting, which can be a little more variance or high variance. So I'm out on that. This is just Harbor Town ball striking. Strokes gained off the tee. Weighted that a little bit just to see that. Putting, I've got two different strokes gained putting numbers here. This first one is last 50 Bermuda. So this is long-term putting on Bermuda. Who tends to do well there. And I want to see how it compares with this is just short-term putting, 12 rounds, the last 12 rounds putting on any surface. Tell me who's doing well. And then a little bit of strokes gained around the green just to see the numbers as well. So that's the model. And let me talk about our very first group of chalky players and a pivot. I think it's going to be Russell Henley here in the $9,000 range. I think Joaquin Niemann right above him at 9,100. And then Alex Noren here at 8,300. Now you got to dip down a little bit to get to Alex Noren. Currently, the projections on Henley are around 17%. I'm recording this on a Tuesday afternoon. I've only looked at one set of ownership projections, and it is Fantasy Nationals. By the way, you can join fantasynational.com /TJ. And if you go to there, you get to save 20% off your membership fee. And you can do all this on your own. You can compare it against mine. If you think mine's stupid, do your own. Okay. And save 20%. You're welcome. So Russell Henley, 17%. Joaquin Niemann projected around 16 right now, and Alex Noren around 14. Now, if you find yourself wanting to eat chalk in one of those guys, that's perfectly fine. You can do that. Or if you find yourself not wanting to because you're eating it up top, maybe at Shane Lowry, maybe at Colin Morikawa, and you need a pivot down here, I think a guy that's in the middle of these guys is Billy Horschel. Now, me and Pat argued about him a little bit on the podcast, but I want to tell you why I like him. I mean, first of all, you can see here, he's 19th in the field in ball striking at Harbor Town, 12th off the tee, 8th in long-term Bermuda putting, and that lines up with the recent performance with the putter that he's had, and pretty good scrambler around the green as well. Now, you may look at these numbers and these red numbers and think the approach game is not good. This is not good. Well, this is why sometimes you have to dive deeper into the stats, right? I'm going to click on Billy Ho's name. All right, so now we're looking at Billy Horschel, all right? Typically, you can see he pops with his Bermuda putting. Bermuda's his best surface. That's a good thing, right? Here's the thing. Fantasy National is accounting for his last 24 rounds in approach play, which is what I had there on that model page. But Fantasy National doesn't get strokes gained data from the Masters. So then the last 24 rounds are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. Look at this performance at the Century Tournament of Champions where he lost 8.5 strokes on approach. That is really weighing down where he shows out on Fantasy National. Maybe it's showing why he's lower in people's models on Fantasy National, maybe less popular than he should be. But I mean, obviously, that's a terrible week. I'm not saying it's not, but it was in January. It may have been one round. I don't know. I haven't dug deep into that, but you could look into that. He got it. He still wasn't great, those two events at the Sony and the Farmers, but he got it back on track and he's trending nicely. At the Masters, he did in fact gain strokes on approach. In fact, he was 12th in the field at Augusta National on approach. And let's look at his record here at the Heritage. He's played here 8 times in the month of April. This 2020 one where he missed the cut in June after COVID, I don't really treat that with a lot of weight for any of these guys, whether good or bad. So he's played 8 in April, and he's got 1 missed cut. And his best, he finished 25th last year in 2021. Now he's got a couple top tens here, but they were a while ago. I'm just saying, I feel like this could be a really interesting spot for Billy Ho. And right now he's projected around 10% sandwiched there between Henley, Neiman, Noren. 10% is not like incredible leverage, but it's something. And you got to admit that Billy Ho has win equity. Like he's not afraid. This is a strong field. This is a stronger field than we've seen at the Heritage in years past. This may not be a Satoshi Kodaira, Wesley Bryan, CT Pan year with this field. But if you look at a pivot and you think, can they win? I think Billy Ho's a guy that you could look at and say, yeah, I think he could. All right, so let's get to another set of pivots here. So we've got a couple of popular names that I want to point out to you again in a different range. So let's scroll down a little bit. You've got this range here with Brian Harmon at 7,700 and Tom Hoagie at 7,600. Currently, Hoagie's projected around 15%. I'm sorry, not Harmon, Hadwin. Hoagie is projected around 15%. Hadwin is projected around 17%. Me and Pat talked up both of these guys on the show. I like both of them. You can see how well they're showing out in my model right here. Very good. Adam Hadwin's number one in the model, right? But is a $7,600 Adam Hadwin chalk, is that what we want? I don't know. So I'm here to bring you a pivot. I'm not here to talk you out of those guys. And I think you can drop down a couple $100 lower and find Mr. Dylan Fratelli, the South African. Fun fact, we interviewed him on the Tour Junkies podcast. You can search it on the audio version of our podcast. Kind of an interesting dude, very cheap, told a very interesting story to demonstrate his cheapness. You should listen to that. He's a penny pincher. That's what I mean. I don't mean he's cheap. He's a penny pincher. Anyway, Dylan Fratelli, look at some of the boxes he's checking here. 30th in approach, 10th in opportunities gained. So he's hitting it well with the irons. 36th in the field in ball striking at Harbor Town over his last 24 rounds, if he's had that many. Off the tee is low, but that's definitely because of accuracy issues, because he's a long hitter, very long, surprisingly long. And typically he rips driver. Clearly he doesn't do that here at Harbor Town, or he wouldn't probably be 36th in the field in ball striking. So I don't think that off the tee, like knowing Dylan Fratelli, and that's another thing that sometimes you just have to realize about these, these numbers is like, if you know the player, then you can kind of understand why he's down on off the tee numbers. He misses a lot of fairways. The putting is average. It's kind of middle of the pack for this. This is 144 guys, I think. So this is like a little better than middle of the pack. Long-term Bermuda putting and short-term putting is a slightly better number. He's a very good scrambler. And in fact, I think he's been a good scrambler historically throughout his PGA Tour career. Let's take a look at Dylan Fratelli's player page. So you can see here, typically not a great putter, but Bermuda is actually just slightly his best putting surface over the long term of his career. Plays well in the wind or moderate conditions. I would definitely say this is an average or easy course in terms of scoring. But let's look at like long term. Let's look at the player that Dylan Fratelli is. Long term and short term, great iron player, average or better. Solid around the green, average or better. Putting is trending. It's off the tee is where you find a lot of struggles for Dylan Fratelli. But I like what I'm seeing in these approach numbers here. Approach since the Genesis has been positive every single week. I mean, basically average at the Honda. But I mean, look at the finishes, look at the approach numbers, continues to scramble well. The off the tee stuff, let's take a look at this. You can go up here to Fantasy National and click on the left, top left, and change it to like distance and accuracy. All right. So now we can get a better understanding. I mean, 178 mile an hour ball speed's pretty good. Now we can start to get a better understanding. Doesn't really check the box in fairways gained or good drives gained. That is a little concerning, but again, look at how much distance he gains every week. It's probably because he just rips driver when he can. But I don't think we're going to see even Dylan Fratelli rip a lot of drivers. Just probably not going to happen here at Harbor Town. So now let's take a look at his experience at Harbor Town, because I think that's interesting too. He's played here 3 times. 56 place finish last year, 8th the year in June when it was the COVID year, and played a lot longer and softer. And then 32nd in 2018. Never missed a cut. Gain strokes. Look at how the off the tee numbers changed in those couple years, right? Like total off the tee, he's positive probably 5 strokes. And it's probably because he clubs down and he can hit a 4-iron into these fairways or a 2-iron into these fairways or whatever it is. His approach number is solid, his around the green number is solid, and he's trending nicely, which is what I like to see in a pivot. That's my next. I got one more pivot for you. Before I get to it, give me a like, a subscribe, comment what you think of these pivots. comment which of these chalk plays are you willing to fade? You know what I mean? Which one are you willing to get rid of and possibly play one of these guys? If you like this video, tell me why. If you want me to keep doing it, this is the first time I've done it. I might do it again next week. I might not. So just play. You gotta play your cards right. All right. The last pivot I'm gonna give you, and I don't really have like a chalk name with it, but he's kind of just a pivot play because I know he's gonna be low owned. Currently, he's projected at 3%, and it's more of a gut call. Okay, so call me crazy. At $7,000, can I interest you in a little Cameron Tringali? But and he's not been playing well. My only thing is when I'm scrolling here, I think, man, Cameron Tringali, we've paid a lot more for Cameron Tringali in fields of this strength and even stronger at times. And I think even recent times. And he's always historically been in my mind a good iron player and good around the greens. That should check the box. There are definitely some things that are not good for him. His putter, he does struggle off the tee with distance, which is why it's another reason why I think he rates out poorly here. And he's never really hit it well at Harbor Town. But I want to dive deeper. Let's take a look at Cameron Tringali. I know I got to do a lot of convincing here with Tringali. So let's take a look at the player card. Typically gain strokes putting everywhere, which is good. Typically, look at this. Look at this. Historically, far above average iron player on the PGA Tour. Historically, a good scrambler on tour. All right. Even recently, with some of the struggles, still gaining strokes with the irons, which is what we like to see. I like to see the approach number still strong. Look at the awful numbers here. These two things here are really pulling him down. I don't know if he had the bad end of the weather wave at the Players. I'm hoping he did, but that's really really bad off the tee, and that's probably hurting his ball striking numbers a lot. And then he didn't scramble well, which he normally does. Let's take a look at the Heritage. What he's done here happens to gain strokes off the tee because it probably, I don't know. But it's weird that he gains strokes off the tee and then he loses so much with his irons. But look at how long ago it's been: 2011, 2014, and 2015. Like Cameron Tringali is a much more experienced player, a veteran player. He had some good runs back then. I looked it up. I think 2015 was actually a good run for him. But I mean, just look at some of his longer term form if we pan out. Like look at 2021, starting with the Schwab. Look at some of these finishes here, and a lot of these are in solid fields. Um, Torrey Pines at the Farmers, Genesis just a couple months ago, gaining 5 strokes on approach. Zozo Championship, the Northern Trust. I mean, it's not like, and look at this. Look at this, 2021. I mean, the guy is a player. Look at all the green here in the ball striking and tee to green categories. And it's definitely not showing up right here. I want to look at one more thing. Let's look at his driving and distance and accuracy stuff. I think it'll tell a better story in his favor. Good drives gained historically has been something that he's checked the box, and I like that. And that's a proprietary fantasy national stat. Even the miscut at the Players and the Arnold Palmer, it wasn't the off the tee numbers weren't as bad as maybe strokes gained off the tee makes it look. He was still decent, hitting decently good drives at the Players. API was just an off week, coming right off the Genesis performance where he hit it so well. I just think at $7,000, like Tringali is tempting at 7,000 just because of the type of player he is. And you can't say that he doesn't have top 5 upside. You just can't, because he's top 5 tournaments recently, like in this season and last season and the season before that. Like he has it in him, but it's his first time here since 2015. And I think he's here because I think he probably really believes this is a good place for him, and he knows he could probably capitalize on it. So 3 pivots there: Billy Ho, Dylan Fratelli, Cameron Tringali. Billy Ho projected around 10%, Fratelli around 6%, and Tringali around 3%. Some possible pivots in DFS, some possible names to look out for in a head-to-head matchup, betting market, or something like that. Horschel's definitely my favorite. I like Horschel here a lot. I also like Fratelli a good bit. I'm talking myself into Tringali just by doing the video. But tell me what you think. Put it in the comments. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a subscribe. We'll see you in the Nut Hut. See you.